Welcome to the Live Well, Perform Better podcast. My name is David Duggan and I'm the director of Below the Line, an Irish-based consultancy specialising in helping people, teams and organisations raise their levels of consciousness, inner potential and performance. I am part of a team made up of experts from the worlds of business, elite sport, adventure and health and well-being. We are coaches, mentors and advisors to some of the world's biggest companies and organisations, as well as smaller businesses, entrepreneurs and people looking to make their mark in the world. Our guiding mantra at Below the Line is live well, perform better. What does that mean, you might ask? Good question. Maybe the easiest way to describe it from our perspective is finding the formula that works for you when it comes to things like looking after your physical and mental health, running your business, developing your career, leading your people, or simply being able to show up as brilliantly as possible into your own life, both for yourself and those around you. That's why each week I sit down with a member of our team or an invited guest for a conversation that focuses on the question, what do the words live well, perform better mean to you? This question is a way into exploring with people from a range of different backgrounds, industries and disciplines. What are the practices, techniques, habits or ideas that they use to help them to show up and be at their best in all areas of their lives? Whether that's as CEOs, leaders or managers, or as parents, family members or friends. We keep it short and sweet so that you can extract all the good stuff and get on with the rest of your day and hopefully put some of our knowledge, experience and expertise into play for yourself. This week I'm delighted to be joined by another very special guest, Jenny White. Jenny is a qualified nutritionist and co-founder of Beoga Nutrition, a business that works with both individuals and organisations providing advice, guidance and coaching on how we can build better habits around our diet, lifestyle choices and our relationship with food. Jenny spoke to me about her career journey from the legal profession to that of nutritionist, what drives her to do what she does, and how as a self-employed business owner and mother, she looks after herself by following the advice she gives to her clients, which is ultimately about making and keeping things as organised, simple and repeatable as possible. This is a must-listen conversation for anyone interested in the role that food plays in our health, why good nutrition is really simple and easy, as well as why we should be paying attention to the 4 pillars of movement, diet, sleep and stress so that we can be at our best as often as we can. You can subscribe at www.belowtheline.ie where you can stay up to date with our podcast as well as our exclusive online events and sessions, including our Press Pause coaching community. Thanks for listening and see you next week. Before we start this week's episode, I'd like to take a minute to let you know about the next in-person event we are hosting on the 2nd and 3rd of March 2023 in the beautiful Brook Lodge Hotel and Spa in Macredon Village, County Wicklow. Our first Elemental Leadership experience took place earlier in October 2022 and it went so well that we decided to do it all again. As we all know, the past few years have been a mixed experience for us all. For some, it has been about stress management, coping and surviving, both personally and professionally, while for others, it has been a time for recovery, reflection and self-care. Either way, we all know and can see that yet again our world is changing, and with it, so must our mindset, our attitude and our energy, which is why we're offering you the opportunity to recharge your leadership, rediscover your performance edge, and re-inspire yourself to successfully meet the moment and challenge of right now. At the Elemental Leadership Experience, you will be a participant in 2 days of inspiring sessions, workshops and talks, facilitated by the Below the Line team of expert business and performance coaches, all while enjoying wonderful accommodation and hospitality in a beautiful part of the world, with a group of like-minded, success-orientated people. Places are limited, so if this sounds like something you want to be a part of, head over to www.belowtheline.ie for full details on how you can reserve your place and avail of our early bird rate, an offer which extends until the 1st of December 2022. Thanks for listening, and now on with the show. So Jenny, thanks very, very much for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. And the traditional question on this podcast is, please tell me, why do you do what you do?
So, well, thanks for having me, Dave. I suppose why I do what I do is, firstly, I'm a nutritionist, Beoga Nutrition. I am one of the co-founders. The reason I got into nutrition was because I just loved it. I was working in the legal field in a former life, and while I liked it, it just felt a bit like the grind, getting up every day, clocking in, clocking out. There was elements I loved about it. I loved some of the people I worked with, all that kind of thing. But ultimately, it just didn't light that fire for me. And I started to wonder, what do I like? What would I like to be doing? And I kind of just accidentally fell into nutrition, to be honest. I ended up watching a couple of food documentaries, started reading some articles, and I just thought, wow, this is so interesting. How do more people not know about this? And I just kept going in that direction, and I'm still going, to be honest. And it was just that I just found something I loved and was just passionate about. And the more I knew, the more I wanted to know. So I just figured that was a good career path to try keep going on, that hopefully I wouldn't get bored, and it would always be interesting.
Something you mentioned there that just jumped out at me right away. How do people not know more about this stuff? How do we not know more about this stuff, in your view?
Oh, I think there's a lot of reasons, to be honest, there. And I suppose some of the immediate ones that come to my head are, well, there's a lack of education, I think. Again, you can delve deeper into any of these avenues. I mean, I think there's a bit of mixed messages in the media. I think there's a lot of kind of clever marketing and that kind of thing, which has taken over for some people. Products and sales is the goal behind some of the food. Sometimes I use inverted commas, foods they're pushing. And people think they're doing great work buying these, these products that are heavily marketed and all the rest, and not so much. I think we're missing that just foundational education on real food. What is real food? Where do you get it? How does the body function? How does the body process it? It sounds very simplistic, but why do we eat? Obviously the taste and things are great, but actually we need the raw materials for our body to digest, take up the nutrients, and build our hormones, our brain chemicals, all these things, so we can function. That's really the bottom line with our food. But I think it's just gotten lost along the way somewhere.
What is it that people don't know?
It doesn't have to be complicated. Pare it right back. If your grandmother wouldn't recognize it as food, don't bother eating it. Whole foods in their natural state: fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, meat, fish, eggs, rice, oats. They don't have an ingredients list. They're as nature made them. The body knows exactly what to do with them, and they're loaded with everything we need. It's not complicated. I think where it gets complicated is some people can kind of lock themselves into these restrictive diets, and there's fancy packaging and calorie counting and number crunching, and the body's not a number crunching machine. It just wants real food, eaten in a relaxed fashion, not gobble down on the run, not all these things. Just pare it right back. That it's kind of boring advice, but that's the simplest way I could put it.
Yeah, and back to the point you made about fads or skinny teas, whatever you want to call them, but protein bars. We all see these things, and you kind of think to yourself, that's just. It seems to me that products like that are kind of saying, here's a bit of goodness, but in a form that that is more palatable. But I kind of think that's you're shortchanging yourself there by kind of going down that road, as opposed to exactly what you said, which is, could you pare it back? Could you keep it a bit more simple? Could you adopt that kind of more old school type of approach, it seems?
Yeah, and I mean, one protein bar isn't going to send you on the way to health or anything like that. I think it's the small habits daily are what actually accumulates to good health, and like that can be just paring it back, or like think about your food for the day, focus on a solid breakfast, a better snack, just eat real food. It's not going to be the clever all singing, all dancing protein bar that makes you healthy. It's the sum of all your other daily habits and your food habits throughout the days and the weeks.
Yeah. So what's your advice to anyone who's coming to you saying, and they can come to you for a variety of reasons. I know it could be weight, it could be other things related to stress or anxiety, but where do you start with someone, and how do you get them to start to reframe their relationship with food?
Oh, good question. And I suppose everyone is different, which makes it tricky. And I suppose that's why I love having the chat with people. I love having an initial consultation to kind of get a feel of where they're coming from. How did they get to this point? And often it will be different for everyone, but I suppose my one tip is always just start somewhere. Start with one small change. Small changes done consistently will add up to big changes in time. So maybe for someone, it's literally just eating an extra portion of vegetables this week, or every day. Keep doing that. And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll add in a new habit, and we just keep going slowly that way. Maybe it's just water, maybe it's something basic, but just make one change. And I think even it's a kind of a confidence booster when people are just ticking that box going, yes, great, I drank the water today. You kind of feel good about yourself. It's a little bit of a boost. And you think you're doing something positive. So make one change is always where I start.
Yeah, yeah. And I see this in other aspects of our work, but sometimes people they go really big about a lifestyle change, and they're kind of I've got to change everything, and that can just be so overwhelming. So I think what you're saying is, no, just start with one thing. You're absolutely right. You can build on a habit, but you got to start with something. So don't blow this up into some kind of I'm ripping up the rule book to start again.
Oh yeah, I see it all the time. Particularly, January, New Year's, everyone is, never eating chocolate again, never drinking, doing, the whole works. And they're just setting themselves up to fail. It's too much all in the one go. And it's overwhelming, like you said. So like that's why I like to, and for some people, there's some people that works well, and they like that structure and the rigidity. Others, the majority of people, I find it doesn't work that well. So I like to start slow and layer things, and kind of when I chat to people, you kind of get a feel of where they're starting and what's a realistic goal for them. Some people are happier to take on more than others. So it's about finding what's a realistic change for somebody, because everyone's different.
What's your experience, or what was your experience over the last couple of years in COVID in terms of people and their lifestyle changes? And what did you see or observe from people coming to you? Were there particular trends that you saw, or was it just take each person as it came?
I suppose a mixture. I mean, COVID forced us to go online with consultations, which I thought initially wouldn't work well at all. I was afraid we'd lose that kind of rapport with people, but actually it was great. I think some people were actually far more relaxed in their own homes talking to us, and were very open and forthcoming with information. And often we talk about very private, personal symptoms or stressors, emotional things. You wouldn't know. Everyone has something different. I suppose there was a mixture of some people saying, right, now I have the time, the space, the opportunity to make these changes. I have no excuse. And then whereas others, maybe things had just got too much and they didn't have a choice anymore. They had to deal with these symptoms because they were just affecting their life in a real way. So I suppose a mixture of some people had the time and the space and thought, okay, now is good, and others were forced to make the change. After that, it was a whole mixture of symptoms in the middle of that.
You mentioned something already about little habits and all that type of stuff. So I'm just wondering, what are the little habits that you would engage in to help you just on a daily basis, showing up and doing your work, being a mum, everything that you're involved in?
Yeah, it's definitely trickier now, having become a mum. I suppose it's done two things. One, it's slightly altered my routine. Let's say, for example, I really like yoga. Before I would have gone to a yoga class, that sort of thing. But since having a little person, that's gone out the window. So now it's YouTube videos at home. So I quite like yoga with Adrian. She's in the living room or the bedroom quite a lot. But it's small things. Before I might have done an hour, now it's 10 minutes, and if I do 10 minutes at the start of the day, I'm kind of happy with myself, to be honest. I might have a mat invasion, somebody crawling under my legs doing little things, but look, it still means I get it done, and that kind of sets me up for the day. I don't do it every day, mind you. If I did, it would be great, but that's just not realistic for where I'm at. So I do love to try and get a bit of yoga in a few times a week. Another basic one, water. Like I have my water bottle here. Each night before I go to bed, we kind of get reset for the next day, fill up the water bottles, get my little work bag ready of like mixed nuts, a piece of fruit. I kind of have the bag packed in a way. It just sets me up for the next day to not, because chances are it's going to be a bit hectic in the morning. I mightn't get to it. And if I don't get to it, then I'm on the back foot for the day, So at least if I have the small bits of prep done, I'm more likely to stay on track. we do a small bit of meal planning. And I say a small bit, you know, so we do a rough outline. What does the week look like? Okay, we're both here these days. Let's try get some meals. Let's do it, you know, a roast chicken on a Sunday, some leftovers for the lunch in the week. Little stuff like that adds up to our house running smoother, to be honest. It's not groundbreaking by any stretch, but it just keeps us on track. If we're eating better, if we're drinking our water, those sort of things, then ultimately that we feel better. We're, you know, we've more energy in the tank. Just the show keeps moving. You know, it's a less stressful week.
Yeah. Well, it's back to what you said earlier about simplicity. It sounds to me like you try and make things and keep things as simple as you can for yourself.
Yeah, do you know what? It wasn't really a conscious thing until I'm saying it now. It does sound like that, all right. I suppose they're just the small things in my control that I can just chip away at. They're not big things. And I suppose maybe I just feel better ticking them off, like, okay, that's organized, that's good. And in my head, there's a bit of organization and we're set up. I like being organized.
Yeah, sure. And it's also, it sounds to me, again, going back to something you said earlier about understanding why we eat. So, one of the triggers I know for me is, I can, is when I'm stressed, is I will reach for sugar, and things like that. So, but I kind of know that, and I have, particularly going back again to what you said about COVID. Like, COVID was a real opportunity for me to do a big reset on, lots of that stuff. So I'm more conscious now when I reach for the sugar, like, what's my mood? Why might I be doing that? Now, does it mean I don't? Not all the time, but if I'm a bit more conscious of it, I can maybe not reach for it and tell myself, no, I don't need that right now, because that's just going to shoot up my stress levels even further. So it's things like that. I think that I'm hearing from you as well, which is, I know what this piece of food or this type of food is going to do to me. So I'll need to avoid that or just stay away from it, and I make other choices.
Absolutely. And I'm not immune to it myself either. We all love sugar. We're hardwired for sugar. I just can't have it in the house. And I think maybe that was another thing from COVID, is a lot of people, while it was an opportunity in one sense, it was a challenge for others, because the kitchen might have been where they were working from, or they had access to the fridge all the time, which meant snacking and different things. So I suppose it's like you said there, it's been aware of these habits and just aware of it, how they affect us. It's down to us, the discipline, and whether we pick it up or not after that. But I think the real power is in knowing how the food works in our body, what it does. And I really feel that's what's missing in today's societies. People don't understand what's happening when they eat food, be it good or bad. And if we don't understand from a basic level, then what hope do we have when we go out to the shop and you have to climb over the biscuits and the cookies to get to the till? You really have to go out of your way to eat healthy and kind of stay on a healthy track these days. I don't think society is particularly there yet. There's more rubbish for sale than there is healthy stuff, which is a pity, but hopefully the tide will start to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they can come to Beoga and yourself for guidance.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll set them straight. Give them a few tips, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Our strapline, as you know, in Below the Line, is live well, perform better. And I always ask our guests, just from their own perspective, what do they think that means to them?
To me, it's kind of like we were talking about there, live well, perform better. If I'm roughly on track the majority of time with, my bit of yoga, a bit of walking, to getting proper sleep, eating well, then I definitely perform better. And performance for me isn't, out running marathons and Ironmans and all this sort of jazz. Performance for me is having enough energy in the tank to keep going all day, for my brain to be working, to be mentally sharp, I suppose, and to just not get overwhelmed with the to-do lists, the work list, the home list, the baby list, all the different jobs and tasks we have to do. So for me, that's what my performance is really. And it definitely comes back to the kind of the 4 pillars of health, in my opinion, like diet, movement, sleep, and exercise. If any one of those sorry, I said movement and exercise. Stress was the other one I meant to say there. So stress, sleep, movement, and diet. If any one of those gets tipped the scales in the wrong way, the whole table starts to rock on us. So I suppose I try keep those as under control as I can, or keep chipping away each day, working on those so I can perform better. I don't know, does that make sense?
That makes total sense, and I love the simplicity of it. And there's 4 pillars, and just remind me them again. So movement, diet.
So movement, diet, sleep, and stress. I kind of call them the 4 legs of the table.
Yeah. Talk to me about stress and food, because I know we talked about that earlier. But this idea of your mood and the food you eat. What do we get wrong about that, or what should we know more about that?
Yeah, good question. So I suppose stress is a funny one, in that even if we're eating the perfect diet, if we are super stressed for whatever reason it may be, we simply mightn't be getting enough of the nutrients we need. We're going to burn through them faster. So we're going to have a higher demand on the body for them. Also, if we're really stressed, chances are we're kind of stuck in fight or flight mode instead of rest and digest mode. Our nervous system is out. So we mightn't be digesting the food as well, absorbing the nutrients as well. So again, you're kind of on the back foot there. You have a higher demand, but yet you mightn't actually be getting the nutrients from your food. So I suppose stress management is huge in terms of, one, making sure you're supporting the body from a nutrient level, but also emotionally and mentally as well. We need to we need to really, if there's a hole in the bucket, there's no point keep topping it up the water. We have to figure out what the hole in the bucket is. And so we need to do some sort of stress management. Some things we can deal with straight away, or like put in tools like meditation or yoga or walking or breathing, whatever it might be. Other stuff is ongoing, you can't deal with straight away. So you'll have to just kind of figure out a strategy that works for you, or maybe it might be to see somebody, get a bit of professional help. But stress isn't to be ignored. It's a huge weight on the system and the body. So I would always encourage people not to try and brush it under the rug and just kind of deal with it as best you can.
Talk to me about just your views on. I'm talking to you, or we're talking now in at the beginning of kind of winter or autumn, winter. So, what should we be thinking about in terms of winter and eating or seasonal eating at the moment, do you think?
So I guess generally immune is the first thing that pops to my head here. Immune health. We're coming into the kind of cold season, change of weather, all that jazz. I suppose winter always kind of strikes me as knuckle down and hibernate time. We're talking soups, we're talking stews, kind of hearty food, but I find there's always great opportunity to just load them with vegetables, get the nutrients in and blitz them all up. But also like even just kind of immune supporting in terms of like vitamin D. We often see the headlines, but in Ireland, they'd say a supplement is a good idea from October to March because we don't get the UVB rays here. So that's one I definitely be thinking about working into the winter regime. And just kind of be realistic on your health goals, just rest, get out for fresh air and nourish the body. Again, it's back to the basics. Don't go crazy over Christmas with all the chocolate and the junk. Have a bit, but don't lose the run of yourself and then have to do this whole make or break diet in January. Just keep loosely on balance all the time, and you'll be fine.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And it something that I've only probably started to tune into in the last couple of years really is this idea of listening to your body, because it does tell you what it might need or what it doesn't need right now, because maybe the temperature's going up, so you don't need a big bowl of porridge now, that type of stuff. It seems to me like that's something we should also be trying to do a bit more of.
Oh yeah, I mean the body is always trying to give you little telltale signs of what it wants or doesn't want, for that matter. Like in clinic when I meet people, I'll always look at their nails, their skin, even sometimes I ask them to stick out their tongue. You can see little marks, little ridges, even in terms of skin, people be like, oh, well, I've always had that dry patch or this redness here, or that's the body trying to tell you something. There's a bit of inflammation or a bit of, something going on. So it's the same with aches or pains or, bloating or itchiness or tiredness, anything, any sort of a symptom you have, the body's trying to tell you something. So it's really important to kind of just tune in and listen. And I'm not saying become a hypochondriac either, obsessing over everything, but just give yourself a chance to actually feel into your body. How do I feel? Do I feel good? Do I feel strong? Am I, as my digestive system, do I feel bloated? Do I feel light? What do I feel? I think everyone's so busy, just go, 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 or on the phones or stuck to things. Sometimes we just forget to tune into ourselves.
I agree. And, we often in Below the Line talk about this idea of, in our deeper knowing, we know these things. It's just a question sometimes of just stopping for a second and tuning into that. And sometimes that only happens when they're sitting opposite you or myself or somebody else, in a coaching or a consultative capacity, and you're just asking someone, what do you think, X situation or that physical manifestation is trying to tell you? And often people know it. And it's the uttering of that's often the first step in, right, well, how do I tackle this, or how do I even first of all acknowledge it to myself and then start to go looking at tackling the problem.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, that's one of the things I love about my job, is having the chats with people in clinic in a consultation. They, like you're saying, there a lot I hear regularly, at least once a week, is, I never thought about that until I was filling out your form, or until we were having this chat, and reflecting on it. People just, as I said, they'd often come in for, say, weight loss, and that's the main goal. But then, it would accidentally come out, oh, sure, I've always had that rash on my arm, or that, I only have a bowel movement once a week or whatever. That's just me. I've always been that way. But actually, once you delve into it, that's the body trying to tell them something, and that's what we need to address. And then the weight will happen. It's funny what people just kind of brush to one side or ignore almost.
Yeah, or again, that idea of carrying a rock around, and it could be really heavy, but after a while you kind of get used to it. So physical ailments or whatever it might be, they could be those rocks that you're just, it sounds to me like you're pointing out people, you're carrying a massive rock around, like, is it not time to drop that rock or do something about it, or whatever it might be? And it also sounds to me that some people are saying, geez, I'd completely forgotten about that, or it's so much a part of me and my life, my story, etc., that I just ignore it.
Yeah, they'll have a lot of over-the-counter medications, that they're just, oh, sure, I have the Rennie for that, or the Gaviscon for that, and I take this for that. It's just the weight loss that I wanted to come in for. And once we actually get chatting about it and see the relationship of, well, some of the foods you're eating that are contributing to the weight might also be contributing to the reflux, or these sort of things. So it's always interesting. And I love when you can kind of see people's brain turning over, kind of going, oh, I never thought about it like that. That's how I get my kicks in work, as sad as it is, but it's so satisfying when people leave with a different frame of mind, kind of going, God, I just never realized that.
Yeah, and armed with a couple of things that they can just start taking action on.
Exactly, yeah. Basic things that will have a big impact.
Yeah. I have two more questions to ask you. So just in terms of your work in terms of organizations and seeing into lots of different organizations, what do organizations get right or wrong about well-being or wellness, do you think?
Oh, it's a big question. I suppose from my experience, there's a huge spectrum. It'll range from, I worked at one company, and they had like their health week, and we did like individual consultations for all the staff. We had I had a room there for the week, and people came in, anyone who wanted an appointment could come in, and we did, X amount of appointments per day, and everyone has something different. So at least every staff member got to be heard. Some might have, female hormonal issues that were really crippling them and affecting their working performance or their attendance. Others might have digestive issues, all sorts of things. So I think when you can kind of help the staff on an individual level like that, then it helps the team, and so on up the way. So like stuff like that works really well. Others will do talks. We might pick a topic. it might be energy, it might be sleep, it might be a mood, this sort of thing. So you'll catch some people with that, but I suppose that's the beauty of the individual ones. You can get into the nitty gritty of whatever is bothering that particular person. For me, I love doing those sort of things, and I think people get a lot out of them. And then it's also a conversation starter as well, or people will be, how did you get on with the nutritionist, or what was your, I bring a body composition scales, and there's this something that there's a lot of feedback on, funnily enough, is this metabolic age thing. So it gives the algorithm looks at like your fat mass, your muscle mass, all this sort of thing, and gives you your metabolic age. It estimates it. That was a huge talking point in one company. It was this ongoing competition between who was going to be older and younger, and how could they change it, and can we get you back to see, can we change it? So it varies, and then you can meet some people who they're just not into it, that they don't want to change. So it really varies. But I suppose what I always try and do is just find something that everyone can relate to. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, and if they feel in any way better, isn't that a great thing? Or even to get them thinking differently, or raise the awareness, like we were saying. We know certain stuff is bad or good, or so maybe when they go into the shop, they might think twice before picking up the Mars bar, or this sort of thing. I kind of digress there, but I suppose that's what I see in companies anyway.
Yeah, well, we're all familiar with could you come in and give a talk on a topic, and you're right. Sometimes that'll be what kind of kicks a few rocks loose for someone mentally and starts to get them thinking. But at the other end of the scale is almost like Jenny or an equivalent is coming in. So go meet her and, have that conversation and, get that more one-to-one support. That's fascinating. Could I ask you just lastly, for anyone listening to this, you've mentioned, just start with small habits or whatever, but just this idea of, for anyone listening to this and thinking, gosh, I need to do something about my diet or my health. What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone as to where is the best place for them to start?
Oh, where's the best place to start? I suppose place is to figure out your goal. What is it you want to achieve? If it's a health goal, in what way do you want to feel better? Kind of define it, so you'll know when you've reached your goal almost. If it's just too vague, you'll float forever, and you'll never get any sort of satisfaction. And it's hard to put a plan in place if there's no concrete goal at the end of it. So I suppose think about what it is that you want to change or want to achieve, and then work backwards as to, okay, well, who is the best placed person for that? That's the first question on my questionnaire, is what is your health goals? So we can kind of lock them down. I suppose I'd always encourage people to kind of think in terms of, like, obviously we work with food, nutrients, and that's going to impact the body, mentally, physically, all that sort of thing. But what we don't hear a lot of is about emotional issues as well. I talk to a lot of people who have kind of emotional blockages, and that's stopping them achieving their health goals, be it weight, or they might have disordered eating, or various different things. And sometimes there's an emotional or a stress that's weighing on people heavily as well that they don't realize. So I suppose think about the body in terms of what you're putting in, but also from like a body work perspective, with a little bit of acupuncture, reflexology, or something like that be of benefit to you. It's not, as much as obviously I'm a nutritionist, it's not all about the food. Sometimes you have to look at the body as a whole. So I suppose determine what your goal is. What would you like to achieve, and then work from there, really, is where I would go.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, again, one of the kind of phrases that comes up regularly in our work is, the issue is never the issue. And I think you've just hit on something really interesting there. Emotionally, the relationship you might have with yourself, the story you're telling yourself about the world you're living in, or what you're doing, etc., can spark these, diet or health choices that mightn't necessarily be helping you. That sounds to me, yeah, you've just kind of cracked open a door there for me about and hopefully for other people listening about, gosh, yeah, that link between emotions and diet and food and all that type of stuff. That's fascinating.
Oh, it's so heavily linked, and I see it all the time. And some people are aware of it, and some people aren't. Um, so it's very interesting, because I suppose some people will kind of almost sabotage their own efforts in their head with their internal dialogue, or some people have been through, awful experiences or trauma or different things that they just haven't processed, and they're still carrying it around like this rock we were talking about. And until someone kind of says, "Hey, you need to put that rock down. I'm going to help you. You need to find the right kind of professional or therapist to deal with whatever that might be to help you there." So it's the body's complex, but I love it. It's so interesting. And I suppose that it brings us back to that old tune into the body. What are you feeling? And go from there, sort of thing. I mean, often, I would always encourage people to give us a ring here. We'll have a quick chat on the phone, see are we the right fit for you. If we're not, I'll always kind of try give someone a steer as to, maybe this direction might be better if I don't feel that we are the right professional for them. Or we would work alongside lots of other professionals as well, and sometimes you get results far quicker when you have a team approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that, just before we finish up, where can people find you and get into contact with you?
So yeah, we are on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Beoga Nutrition.ie is our website. So Beoga is spelled Beoga. It's Irish for vitality. So you can find us on social media or the website, or drop us a line, and we'd be happy to have a chat with you.
Fantastic. Jenny, I knew this was going to be fascinating and inspiring, and so it has proved. So thanks very, very much for giving me of your time and just sharing so much of your experience, your knowledge. I really, really appreciate it. You're very good to do so.
Oh, you're most welcome. I enjoyed the chat. Thanks very much. I hope there was some interesting nuggets and not just me waffling on.
No, there absolutely was. Thanks a million.
Great. Well, listen, thanks very much for reaching out. I appreciate you thinking of me.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's conversation. We hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard and want to stay in touch with us, then please head over to www.belowtheline.ie to subscribe to our mailing list and to explore our upcoming programs and events, including our Elemental Leadership Experience coming up on the 2nd and 3rd of March 2023. Until next time, take care and thanks for listening.